welcome to Texas Football Talk. I'm your host, Jeremy Lockby, once again joined by my brother Clint. In this episode, preseason preview of the wide receiver position. Is it the deepest unit in the country? How you doing, Clint?
Hey, pretty good, man. It's going from running back to wide receivers. We're kind of knocking out probably the easiest position groups to kind of identify who's going to start, and it's really figuring out who's going to come off the sidelines to take their place. I can tell you that Phil Steele currently has our wide receiver room number 6 in the nation. I kind of went and looked at CBS Sports. CBS Sports has us at number 5. But when you have, two guys in Isaiah Neyor and Xavier Worthy, they're, on the Biletnikoff watch list at the beginning of the year, that kind of tells you what you have in this wide receiver room. But it goes further than that. It really goes further than that. And you got a guy like Jordan Whittington who hasn't been healthy for a while. That's more than likely going to play that third wide receiver on the offense.
And even further than that, with Agiye Hall, 𝗟𝗜𝗞𝗘, a kid like Brennen Thompson who runs a 10-2, 100 meters. Like you said, the depth of this receiver room and the ability to make explosive plays is off the charts. But yeah, the question is there going to be enough balls to go around for this talented group?
Yeah. So really, when you're talking about, and we'll get into explosive plays, but I think a lot of questions are, and you hear Steve Sarkisian take these questions from media members, is how do you keep these guys happy, right? Obviously, wide receivers want the ball as much as they can get it. But in 2019, kind of going back to 2019 in that Alabama class where you had Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, and then even Najee Harris catching the ball out of the backfield, which we expect, Bijan Robinson to do as well. You're talking about Jerry Jeudy, who had 77 receptions, Devontae Smith with 68, Henry Ruggs with 40, and then Jalen Waddle with 33, and then Najee Harris with 27. It's really not the reception numbers I'm looking at, but it's also going back to that explosive plays question that you kind of asked yourself. Was they were looking at about 17 yards per catch. So I think the explosive plays are there. I don't think you have to worry about, how are they going to get these guys the ball. They're going to take what the defense is giving them each and every play. And in saying that, I think when you're looking at Jordan Whittington and you're having to really looking at the two outside guys, you have a guy like Isaiah Neyor, who we actually had an opportunity to meet. And you were like, damn, it's, looking at a 6'3" wide receiver in Isaiah Neyor and then having a guy like Xavier Worthy, it's going to be hard to really cover these guys one-on-one, because if you have a 5'11" cornerback going against a 6'3" wide receiver like Isaiah Neyor, it's a 50-50 ball every time. And then we obviously seen what Xavier Worthy did and all the accolades, and we'll kind of get into that, what all the accolades that he had last year as an all, true freshman All-American, trying to cover him on the outside. So I would look for Jordan Whittington to be your possession wide receiver and probably garner a lot more or have a lot more catches than he has in previous years.
Yeah, so you covered a lot there.
Sorry.
So no, it's perfect because when they get the ball in their hands, you talked about it. So distributing the football, it's not how many plays or how many balls come your way. It's what you do once you get the ball in your hands. And these guys are explosive. And yeah, I've never when I walked up to Isaiah last night, I said 6'3" receivers aren't what you see every day. But as I was building this, I look at Agiye Hall. He's 6'3". You're talking about Troy Omeire. He's 6'3". So they have big guys in the room, but then of course they have the speed demons too, like Whittington, Worthy, Thompson, to go along with that. So it's a great combination of size and speed. But the NFL wants guys who, when they get the ball in their hands, can get the ball in the end zone. So they're not looking at catch production because they understand that Texas is a deep team, just like they understood this team in Alabama was a deep team. But that's what Quinn has to do pre-snap, like you just said, is find the guy that's going to be open. And then once that guy gets a lot of extra attention because he's making plays, then shift the focus over to another guy. But there's depth, and that's the key here because like we talked about with Jordan Whittington, he has been injured his last 2 seasons. But when he's on the football field, he's highly productive. So if that were to happen again, you got guys in here that could slide in similar to other positions we've talked about. Guys that could slide in and have a limited drop in production and pick up things right where they are. But I just like the diversified body types in this room. Like you said, you standing next to Isaiah Neyor, you're 6'3", 213 pounds, and you get. I was like, how does anybody get the ball over you? He's like, they don't. I'm like, well, keep that coming because his arms are long too. It's not just the height, the length, and the catch radius that he has. And it's I asked Anthony Cook the same thing. I was like, how do you guard a guy like Isaiah Neyor? How do you guard a guy like Troy Omeire? And he's like, you got to get in their hip pocket. You can't allow them to have separation because if you do, they have that advantage. So love the depth in this room. Love the diversification and the skill set of these guys. And I don't think getting the balls to them is going to be a problem. It's going to be the explosive plays they're able to generate once they get the ball in their hands.
Yeah. So you were talking about, having conversations with, Anthony Cook, and it's funny because Isaiah Neyor tell you that he's the fastest guy in the room, right? He's the fastest guy on the team. But then you go and you talk to Jordan Whittington, he'll tell you the fastest guy on the team. Then you talk to Xavier Worthy, and he'll tell you the fastest guy on the team. But then we had a conversation with David Benda, and he told us that Xavier Worthy, probably Brennen Thompson, and I think he gave us some
Keelan Robinson.
Keelan Robinson are the fastest guys on the team. But he also told us about Isaiah Neyor, and he said Isaiah Neyor is just not tall and lengthy. He has wiggle. He's able to get out of breaks with his size, and I think that's important. To be able to run routes. And then you asked Isaiah Neyor last night what route he ran in the spring game to catch that long pass from Quinn Ewers, and I'll let you kind of explain to the listeners what exactly I guess what that route was and what that hesitation on the sideline to get him open.
So again, it was I described it as a post. I said to him, it really didn't look like anything that I had ever seen scheme wise on a post because it was deep. It was really deep. It was like a 30-yard, before he broke to the pylon. And he's like, I didn't think he was going to throw me the ball. He's like, and all of a sudden I broke, and there it was. But it was communication between him and Quinn of where to break the post route off. Normally, like I say, you break it off a little earlier in your drop, probably 12 to 15 yards down the field. You look into the post. That was a little deeper. But it was something that they talked about pre-huddle. All smart kids too, man. Like everybody we talked to last night is you could talk to them about scheme, philosophy, especially David Benda. He likes talking philosophy. But the big thing we got out of Isaiah was, transfer in high school from a private school to Arlington Lamar, had only played 3 years of organized football there. Therefore, he was under-recruited, went to Wyoming. He was their whole offense. If you talk to national guys, it was Isaiah Neyor was the Wyoming offense. So the first opportunity he got to play, I'm sure, with an offensive coordinator like Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood and the kind of athletes that Texas has, he jumped on it. But just a really good kid, and the story is true. He got recruited out of the classroom. The wide receiver coach was his teacher, and said, "You don't play any sports." He said he ran hurdles, but he didn't like it, and so the rest is history. He found himself on a football field the next day, and it progressed ever since. And it's amazing, great story, Isaiah Neyor is. But yeah, so getting to the root of the story, it wasn't a conventional post route. It was a deep something they had kind of made up. He didn't think he was going to get the ball. All of a sudden, he's open and it's in his hands, and he's in the end zone.
Yeah, so I as people are going to probably watch this over the next couple of months, I want to kind of put last night into. So as we're taping this on July the 24th, me and Jeremy on July 23rd, July 23rd, we had an opportunity to kind of do a meet and greet, under Burn Orange Heroes, which is an NIL deal, and we just happened to have an opportunity to speak to some of these guys. So as we're taping this on July 24th, we're talking about July 23rd, the night of July 23rd, as we're talking about last night. Let's talk about Jordan Whittington real quick, man, because when you see him, without pads on, he's built like a running back. He's built like a running back. He's not built like a conventional, what you would see slot receiver. You agree with that?
Yeah. When we went, it's the first time for us to see a lot of these guys, not from the stands or off TV, to actually get to see them in person. And Jordan Whittington, as he's described, is 6'1", 203 pounds. But he looks a whole lot bigger than that because I'm 5'11" and 190 pounds, and I work out daily, try to. So consider myself a pretty decent, muscular guy. But this guy, I don't know where that other 20 pounds came from. But it's all muscly, thick up top. And we talking to David Benda, and we said, "What's it like to tackle a guy like Jordan Whittington?" And he said that was my introduction to college football. He's like, if you're not ready to hit that guy, he is loaded and he will knock you. And we saw that. We saw that in a play that he made last year. where he caught the ball between the hashes and broke, several tackles and bowling over people for a 30-yard after the catch run. It wasn't just running down the sidelines; it was going through people. So you can definitely see his build. And he's kind of the one in between, right? You got the slider guys like Xavier Worthy and Brennen Thompson, and I wrote a couple of other names. And you got the 6'3" guys, the Omeires, the Halls, and the Neyors, and he's right there in the middle. He's 6'1", but like you said, he's thick. And again, you get him in the slot with a slot corner who's probably going to be a little bit undersized. He breaks that first tackle, makes a miss, and is in the third level pretty easily. So I just need him to stay healthy. You've seen him be explosive when he's healthy. Went back and looked at his recruiting rankings when before last night, and didn't realize. I mean, I knew he was a 5-star kid, but didn't realize he was rated as high as he was coming out of high school from Cuero. And I did ask him that too. I said, "What's it like to play every down of a high school game where you don't come off the field at all?" He said it's more mental than it is physical, because I thought the endurance would be an issue, the cardio and stuff like that. He's like, no, it's all mental. You got to switch sides of the field. Like, you immediately go from playing offense, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing, to flip it and playing defense. And what's my plan here? What I need to execute as a defender? It's more of a mental thing when you play both sides of the field. And I said, well, they don't ask you to do that at the University of Texas, but it was a good conversation starter.
Yeah, and we were talking to a defensive player last night, and he was talking about, we were talking to him about wide receivers, and he brought up the fact that Jordan Whittington understands both offense and defense because of his time at Cuero. So he was like, man, look for this guy. He said somehow, some way, he knows what the defense is going to do on third down every time. So he knows exactly where to go, find that space at. So I see Jordan Whittington honestly playing a big part in this. I think Steve Sarkisian said last year before he got injured at Oklahoma, he was the leading wide receiver on the team. And then once he got injured, I think Xavier Worthy obviously had to step up, being really the only wide receiver. I'm not going to say only wide receiver, but that wide receiver that could make the plays that were necessary for the offensive side of the ball. But to me, he's your third down possession wide receiver. Jordan Whittington is. And I think if you find yourself in a third and short and you got Bijan in the back, and then you got obviously Jordan Whittington, it's given, these defenses, they're having to think about what they want to do with their defense, because you have a guy like Jordan Whittington that's playing the slot that can get you those necessary yards. And if he takes one, if you need 5 yards and he gets it at 3 yards, he has that running back build to get those extra 2 yards for you, like we've seen in past games.
And I do want to bring up another unit that played at Texas not too long ago, and that was Agiye Humphrey, Colin Johnson, and Devin Duvernay, right? We weren't worried about getting balls to Devin Duvernay, but he was drafted, in the NFL. Really weren't worried about ball distribution with Colin Johnson, but he made it to the NFL. And then the same thing with Agiye Humphrey. And that was probably the most formidable wide receiver room we've had at Texas in some time. Of course, before then it was Shipley and Cosby. Before that, it was the Roy Williams, Sloan Thomas, B.J. Johnson. But this is a deep group of receivers, and I'm not limiting them to that Duvernay, Johnson, and Humphrey class. I think they could do more than that. But that's the last time you had 3 truly productive receivers on the 40 acres, and you saw what that paralleled to. That was probably an undermanned team that found their way in the Sugar Bowl and beat Georgia. So not saying they're going to make that leap as far as a team, but this team or this wide receiver group can definitely be as productive as that group in my mind.
Yeah. So if you go back and look at Duvernay has almost the same build as what Jordan Whittington has. He was at about 5'11", 200 pounds. You know what I'm saying? So obviously Jordan Whittington's got a couple of inches on him and a couple of pounds, but they're kind of built the same, and Devin Duvernay, he had that, hey, get the ball in his hands, and he was hard to tackle by defensive back. So I think you're right, man. But I just think that the sky's the limit with this wide receiver room. What you've been able to see in Xavier Worthy, obviously bringing in Isaiah Neyor from Wyoming, step up in competition there. We'll kind of see what he's kind of unproven at the Power 5 level. So we'll see what he got there. But you do have somebody in Jordan Whittington. If he can stay healthy, we'll have a lot of balls going his way this year.
And you got a guy like Agiye Hall, who caught 2 balls in the national championship game, and he might be your fifth receiver on this football team. Don't know where he's going to end up after fall camp. Again, he transferred in after the spring, so hasn't had any scrimmage reps with the team. But that gives you an idea of the depth. He was an Under Armour All-American, caught 2 balls against Georgia in the national championship game, 28-yard catch. So, but I do want to go back real quick to circle to scheme. And you're talking about Jordan Whittington knowing what the defense does on third down, which allows him to get through his route progression and figure out where to be to get open and be a security blanket for the quarterback, especially in that slot position, is something I picked up from Brennen Marion early last week. And that's wide receivers looking into the line of scrimmage to see how many down linemen there are, because that generally gives them an idea of what coverage they're going to see. And then once they figure out how many guys are going to be in coverage, then they can figure out how the cornerback is shading them. Is he shading them inside, outside, which gives them the other answer to the question. Is it 2 deep? Is it 3 deep? Is it single high? And then allows them to develop a game plan pre-snap. And that was something that I never did as a receiver, was look inside other than to get the spot of the football where I looked outside, but never played at this advanced level. But looking down the line of scrimmage to see how many guys have their hand on the ground kind of gives this wide receiver group an idea of what they're going to see in play and sets up their game plan. And then ultimately it sets up their releases and how they get up the football field to get open.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Brennen Marion, because I think, what he's been able to do in the short amount of time that he's been, there on the 40 acres is to bring someone in. Obviously had a Biletnikoff winner last year and, at Pitt with Jordan Addison, who now is playing at USC. But Brennen Marion, he's all about, technique, right? Technique comes before, running routes, and I think that's absolutely important. It is to understand what the fundamentals are. And I think Steve Sarkisian brought the probably, if not probably the top 5, top 3 best wide receiver, coaches in to coach these obviously really good wide receiver group.
And innovation, right? So he was also talking about, he had picked up something on film that defensive backs were doing to Jordan Addison last year in the early part of the season, where they would let him release off the line because they couldn't really get their hands on him because of his quickness and his ability to jab step or whatever, just get off the line of scrimmage, whatever release he decided to use. And so he found that cornerbacks, as they would let him go and then would grab him by his shoulder pads within the first 5 yards. So he came up with a drill, so that Addison could continue to concentrate through a shoulder pad grab or some kind of jersey grab as he's flying by. So innovation too. He watches film of his own guys. And that's something that I didn't get a chance to ask him that I wanted to ask him, was how he breaks up his day. Talking about Coach Marion, is it self-scouting? How much time does he spend on the football field? How much time does he help develop the game plan with Coach Flood and Coach Sark? And then how much does he spend time in talent acquisition, working with the player personnel group to again get the guys like Jonte Cook, Jalen Hale, Ryan Niblett, because that's where he's killing it too, is in the receivers, the future receivers that are coming to campus. That's first 100 players in the country right there when you're talking about Hale, Niblett, and Cook, and then you throw in a Jonah Wilson. So yeah, he's doing a heck of a job on the recruiting trail, bringing in guys that can continue to make this room as deep going forward after the 22 season. Very impressive, innovative, works hard. Everything you've ever heard about him. He aspires to be a head coach. So he's not. I'm not saying he's looking at Texas to be a stepping stone, but again, if you get an opportunity to work with Coach Sarkisian, Coach Flood, prior head coaches, learning offense. He's an offensive guy. He developed his own offense, the go-go, and is trying to progress in this game. So innovative, hardworking. The kids, like I say, relatable to the talent that he is able to bring on to campus and play for the University of Texas. A dynamic hire, and I think it's going to be very beneficial for the University of Texas going forward.
All right, so obviously the wide receivers go as the offensive line goes, as the quarterback goes, right? And still question marks there. I'm gonna end you with I'm gonna ask you a question. We'll kind of end with that. How many 1,000-yard receivers does the University of Texas have this year?
2. I think Worthy doesn't get injured. He usually makes 1,000 last year, and I think Isaiah Neyor enough explosive plays. You get the ball in his hands. He's going to have to touch it 50 times with a 20-yard per catch average to get there. So anybody who hits 1,000 yards is going to have at least 50 balls. So I think it might be tough for that second guy to hit 1,000 yards, but it's going to be awfully close. If you ask me how many 800-yard receivers on the football team, I'd tell you 3. 1,000-yard receivers, I think it's definitely 1, and it could possibly be 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I think it really got a good chance of getting 2 1,000-yard receivers. I think you're correct. I think probably the best answer is probably 3 800-yard receivers. Because I think it's possible. I think if you're spreading the wealth around, again, quarterback's going to go where the defense gives them the best opportunity to get a completion, right? So I think you're going to spread those things out, spread them out, and depending on how many guys they put over the top of Xavier Worthy and how many guys they put over the top of Isaiah Neyor will really give you that answer. Because you can only put so many guys over top.
Right, and I still want 40 touches a game between Bijan, Roschon, and Keelan. And you got to factor in the tight ends too. We're talking to the defensive guy, and we were telling him we'd cut these. We're working on these 2 videos, and he's like, "Don't forget about the tight ends. The tight ends are explosive." So we got to talking about them as well. And that video is coming up. But like you said, you got to not only wide receiver distribution, but running back distribution and getting the balls to the tight ends. That's why I say it's going to be difficult. Again, in my mind, you got to catch at least 50 balls with a 20-yard per catch average to get to 1,000. I think Worthy's gonna get there. It can Neyor and Whittington, one of those 2, like really establish themselves. But I think there's strength in depth. I think 3 800-yard, at least 800-yard receivers. I think one's still going to get over 1,000. But I think the depth of that gives the defense more things to worry about. Than two guys that over 1,000. I'd rather have 3 guys with the potential to bust. And I think you have more than that here. But 3 guys that they really have to scheme up to stop.
Yeah. All right, man. It's getting exciting. We're getting closer and closer and closer. I think we're 6 Sunday or 5 Sundays now, or 6 Saturdays, whatever it is, from the first game. It's getting really exciting. So we'll continue on with the offensive position previews. Probably do tight ends next. And then we'll kind of figure out if we're going to continue to do offense. We're going to do a little defense. Because I think offensive line is one we're going to definitely save probably towards the end of fall. And then we'll kind of see where this whole quarterback situation. I know Steve Sarkisian said he wants to have it done sooner than later, definitely sooner than what he had last year. So hopefully probably within the first 2 weeks of fall camp, we're probably going to know who the quarterback is that's leading the ones out. So definitely excited. Got done with running backs, got done with the wide receivers. So we appreciate you listening. As always, you can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk, on Instagram at Texas Football Talk, and on Twitter at TX Football Talk. Appreciate you listening as always, and have a wonderful day. Hook 'em.